Welcome to Speak as One. I'm Julie Coriath. Today we have with us Lew Temple. And you might know Lew Temple from The Walking Dead or one of my personal favorites, Waitress, and many more. And we're going to find out so much more about you today. Lew, thanks for joining us.
Wow, well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here. Not just to talk about me. That's not very exciting, but we probably eventually will have to do that. Is that right?
We will be talking about you and
just hoping to get out of that. You know how you show up to math class and you hope the teacher doesn't throw that pop quiz, and so actually we're going to do that. But more than that is to kind of talk about what you're doing with wellness and mental health and identifying, and I'm entirely fascinated by that subject and interested in all the levels we can improve. So I look at it more as a total improvement as opposed to a diagnosis of flaws. Like, I think if we take on mental health as a subject, it's about getting better, doing good.
it is about getting better and doing good. I
Yes.
like that. Yes.
Yes.
And one of the things we like to say is we're healthier together.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
And real, because
it's true.
because that is true. I'm a guy that buys into that we all are one, and as you do well, so do I, and as I do well, so do you, and that there's more than enough.
Yes.
Those are really hard, and that's another word I'd like to kind of remove from our vocabulary. You and I have talked on occasion about vocabulary words that we can remove that give us more strength, and hard is one of them I'd like to take out, because hard is this pavement that we drive on, or this table is fairly hard.
It's hard.
We think it is, but I think that the molecularly this thing's moving, and I think in my quantum, my best quantum self, that I could actually stick my finger through this, but I haven't
gotten there yet.
Got to that faith point, but
And not.
wow, we're really branching out from Waitress, aren't we? Where we just made pies.
Well, and you're here in Houston, and I am too, because normally I live in
So
Austin and
great.
you're in LA, but
Yeah.
we have met because you're here for a movie.
A movie premiere, which they do. They still do movie premieres, which are really a lot of fun, but not as often in Houston, Texas, where I lived for 15 years. I love this city.
Yeah.
Besides New Orleans, this is right up there, probably ahead of San Francisco in the United States for me. So
Yeah.
maybe I could do I do Berlin, New Orleans, Istanbul. Globally, there's a lot, but somewhere in the top 10, Houston is in that. And so here we are premiering Corsicana, which is a Western, and it is the story of Bass Reeves. And Bass Reeves was the first black U.S. Marshal. And because at the time that was an oddity, nobody wanted to ride in his posse.
Yeah.
So he was literally the original Lone Ranger. And so he did the Oklahoma-Texas territory, and he arrested a lot of desperados, even his son at one point, and he's chasing me in this movie. So it's really great. It's directed and starring Isaiah Washington from the Grey's Anatomy fame, and I'm in it, and some other really great people, but we made it in Texas. And I like doing things in Texas because you can.
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's something
enough
about
land around Texas State.
I just think there's a can-do spirit. I've always thought that about Texas.
Yeah, I
Whether
agree
you're
with you
in
on that.
Austin, Texas, or Houston, or Dallas, or Amarillo, or Abilene, or McAllen, that you can really do things in Texas. And you know my favorite saying? This is a hack. I like these verbal hacks. 100% of the things you do get done. Think about that.
Yeah.
100% of the things you do get done. You need to, when you pay your cell phone bill, it is paid. It gets done. It's something you can check it off your list.
Do, and that's how you see Texas. It's a can do. We get things done here.
Can do, will do. Yeah.
Okay.
So I love that, and not just self-made. There's a ton of self-made. You're self-made with this movement that you've started, this company that you've started, this community that you've started. But the thing that you started this conversation we feel better together is a big part of Texas. Because if you need help, Texans help you. And I think I see it the minute I land here.
So when did you move to Texas? So yeah, can you tell me a little bit about
All right.
where you were raised and when you got to Texas?
I'm a Louisiana guy. I'm over in the mud, over in the New Orleans area, and I was a very active young boy, as boys used to be. I wonder about now. Well, there's so much other distraction, and I wonder if I were a young boy, if I would be distracted from riding bikes, going outside, throwing rocks, building forts, making they weren't even motorized go-karts. They were, just wheels on 2x4s and riding them, skateboarding, and then finally at like 8, my dad took me to a baseball tryout. Somewhere that just grabbed me.
And it took away, like, wanting to go and throw rocks and stuff. You were like, baseball's the way, and I'm not.
It became my passion, so that's something that I, and it's never let go, nor have I it. There's a great saying, it's not mine, which most of the things I say, by the way, are not mine. But I steal them, and I do it respectfully. Jim Bouton said that all those years, he was a major league pitcher. All those years I gripped the baseball. In the end, I realized it was the baseball that gripped me. But baseball's been my love, and that took me from high school that I was a skilled player. I was a gifted player, but I wasn't physically very strong at the end of the day. And so not a lot of colleges wanted to take a chance on me or offer me a scholarship, and I couldn't really afford college on my own. Well, I guess it's not the issue. My parents necessarily couldn't afford. Most probably 16-year-olds can't afford college. Could you?
I know.
On your own?
No.
So your parents help. And that's a big thing. So, but my parents might have provided correspondence courses. But so I had to go forward, get this college scholarship, and through baseball, I was adamant about that. In a beautiful school called Rollins College in Orlando, Florida, Winter Park, Florida, offered me a baseball scholarship, and I went.
So during the time, because we are talking about mental health, I would love to know, when you were growing up, did you ever struggle, or did you know about mental health? Was it talked about in your family? Have you ever even heard the word?
Yes, interesting. And the thing about it is, I think what's great about being older, like me, you start to reflect.
Right.
And then you have an understanding of, wow, I knew about that then. So in high school, to make up for my lack of physical bountiful strength, for goodness sakes, I would encapsulate very stringent mental programs. And I read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics.
Ooh.
And in the 70s, this is a book about affirmations.
Wow.
I think, therefore I am. And I was given this book by somebody who said, you want to do anything, you read this book. I'm sure.
Which we hear a lot of now. Sorry to interrupt, but we hear a lot about that now, but back then.
Yeah, crazy.
Right.
And so I read it, and it gave me a skill set of what I thought at that stage of my life, which wasn't mature enough to understand it per se, was that if I affirmed, therefore it becomes. I think, therefore I am. I didn't actually know the practice that requires. So if you say something enough, it builds a habit, of which I try to do. But there has to be some nurturing of that habit and some gardening.
Right.
So I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. You might not be.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to be rich, and what are the habits that I'm forming to become rich, then you start believing. And it's all about that. and you believe that you can. And so I started saying, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. I'm going to be a major, and I wrote it. I wrote it in my locker. I wrote it on 3x5 note cards that were in all my school books. I put it on my bathroom mirror when I got up and brushed my teeth. When I went to bed, I brushed my teeth. I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. And I read that and I saw it. Okay, so that was everywhere in my life. It affirmed my passion. I never played in the major leagues, but somewhere it got so ingrained into me that I believed I could. There was never a time that I felt, I'm only 5'10", 160 pounds. How am I going to do that?
So whenever you weren't getting recruited by any of the colleges, you still had that in your mind and you knew it was going to happen.
That didn't bother me.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me that people didn't want me, which is so bizarre because there's a place in my life at middle age coming forward. I'm really bothered when people don't want me. I'm bothered right now. As an actor, I audition a lot, which is trying out. I audition for roles, and they don't want me. And it's a great trap that is set for me to fail and fall into every time when I let that bother me. And so I have to deal with that. And to me, that's what acting at the stage of my career is to not take that on.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because I guess, when we're in our 20s, we still kind of feel like we're fearless, that, life hasn't happened to us yet.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, you did. You went on to then play college
baseball and then minor league baseball, professional baseball,
which is huge.
It was huge.
It's so hard
and such a tribute to my dedication to my passion. And it wasn't that I ever thought I couldn't. I didn't spend any time thinking I couldn't. I just thought I could. And I look back at the guys that I played with who are so much better than me, and the guys I saw play who are Hall of Fame baseball players, and I realized they never thought about not being good, ever. There are days you get frustrated. There are days that you're like, I suck. We all have those days. Those are right. Good. Those keep you fresh, And so that was really interesting. You asked that question, did you have mental health in your youth? And the answer is, I absolutely did. And somewhere my dad said, you got to stay positive. You got to stay positive. Because I think he saw me and recognized, this could be tough for this kid. He's littler than everybody. He's trying so hard and not much is happening, which is great about baseball because unlike football, you go up against a guy that's bigger than you, you're going to get beat most of the time. But in baseball, there's a skill set. And if you master that skill set, you can compete. And that's what I did. But that positive outlook was huge for me. And then somewhere competition. And I wonder where that came from. I always wonder about competition because I'm told I'm very competitive. I know I'm competitive. I find it healthy, but I think it could be a little unhealthy from my generation standpoint of competition. I think it might be a little intense, and I would like to shed a little of my competitive spirit,
Yeah, well, is it intense or has it gotten you to where you are today?
Interesting, because I totally believe that I have to. My approach as a youth was that I have to outwork everybody that's 6 foot, 200 pounds, 6'1", 200 pounds, which was most of the playing field that was up against me. I have to outwork them. I have to be better than them. If they're getting up at 7 to go run, I have to get up at 4 and do twice as much as them. I have to, and so I wish somebody might have sat down with me and said, let's work smart. Let's not work hard. Okay, so I'm not a believer in hard work. Work smart. You're studying in school. I think when you know the material, put your pen down, put your books down, take a nap, get some rest, go to bed, be fresh, be focused for tomorrow morning's whatever's being asked of you. When I have studied my work for presentation in an audition and I know the lines of my script, or I have a job and I need to know what Axel is going to say tomorrow's episode of The Walking Dead, and I feel good about that, put it down. I know it. I don't believe in cramming. I don't believe in over-prepared. And that's sort of the artist that has had to come out, but the athlete in me is about rote. You're a tennis player, so you know about...
I'm not a tennis player.
I think you are, but so you know about, like, I got to improve my backhand, I got to keep hitting, I got to keep hitting, I got to keep hitting. And I think that works in athletics, but I think in a little bit of organic, in the moment things in life, they need to happen. We talk about being focused, and I believe if you're focused, you'll manage better in the moment than if you're over prepared because you're so locked up with your preparation.
So did you continue, so it sounds like that was, you were over prepared in college. Did you continue that mind frame when you went on to minor
all of those
leagues?
things drove me. So I would keep saying all of those things drove me. And it's interesting because we talk generationally very different. I felt like I needed to escape from my house. Not because I wasn't raised in a household that was unpleasant. I was just raised in a household where my parents were in charge, like any household, and I needed to get away. But I think today it's pretty great being at home, and maybe I'll stay here till I'm 30 because Mom's providing great meals and clothes, and dang, it's expensive to rent an apartment. And that job that I'd have to get to afford this, I'm gonna have to get up at 7 every morning? No. So I'll stay at home. And so I think that drive maybe is great, but I'd have liked to know some of the things that I know now. So I'd offer to young people, enjoy it a little bit more than just knocking it over. You know, like the bucket list. Who came up with that? Why is that a good thing? I'm just going to knock this off. Why not go skydiving twice or 5 times or 100 times or every day? I think I've enjoyed every minute, but clearly I've been pushing. And so we've talked about that before too. When you attach a result, an end result to something, you're setting yourself up maybe for some disappointment. I think it's good to have a preference. I prefer to get cast for Stranger Things, but I can't affirm I'm going to be cast in Stranger Things and have that attachment because there's a lot of other people that are really good, clearly, to do that.
Well, yeah, and that's so true. So whenever, I mean, you were saying how you were growing up and you had positive affirmations everywhere and you're writing down, I'm going to get in the major leagues, I'm going to get in the major leagues. How was that transition when you realized you were going to go to the minor leagues? Did you? Well,
I still felt like that, but then something did change. I think all of that time that I was aware of what...
And one thing too, you played the minor leagues here in Houston, right?
For the Astros, but it was for this, exactly. And oddly, I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, for all you folks in Atlanta. But somewhere in my athletic career, right at professional baseball, I started to see kind of the cream of the crop, and it was rising. Not everybody, but what I noticed was, he is so special. My God, that guy. Okay, there's 2 that are way different than the rest of us. And we're the cream of the crop, and I'm at the bottom of the cream, but those 2 are definitely at the top. And what is it? And there's nothing about that player or that person, there's nothing that I'm like him. I started to recognize something that is one of my skill sets, which is observation. And so, and I've always held that. I was always been able to be around me and go, I see where I fit in here. Mm-hmm. I see where my place is here. I see my part in this story. That's a skill set that I have observationally, that I also think is perception. The best acting advice I ever got was from an architect who builds big, beautiful buildings in Europe, and he talks about feel, F-E-E-L, not field, feel of depth, to be able to feel the young lady that's at the front desk and know what she's doing when people walk in the door, to recognize her, or the homeless guy on the street corner mm-hmm. that is looking for something to eat, even though you're at the stoplight mm-hmm. 100 yards down the road. And so I've always been able to get a sense of that, of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I observationally understood, physically gifted, there were guys that were going to the major leagues that were different than me. So then my game started to change from I'm going to the major leagues to how am I going to survive? How am I going to stay in it? How am I going to just hang on to this job? And so I became good at what I was going to be good at. Mm-hmm. Those guys were great at at the best parts of the game. So that helped me into a survival mode for something that I liked. Mm-hmm. Getting back to this thing, what I always think is important for a young person is passion. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we, actually not young, it's good for everybody. If you can have a passion. Sure. So, as a parent, I think all you do that you can hope for is to ask your child to have passion for something. And so I think that's good. So, and I know there's so much distraction today that it's a little bit more difficult than it was. Hey, you got 3 sports, you've got dance, you've got some makeup, and that's pretty much it. So mm-hmm. which is it going to be? And then you figured out where you were, and it was much easier to be passionate about a thing because there was less things. Mm-hmm. But today there's a lot of things to be passionate about, you can be passionate about several things. Mm-hmm. So not so much. Baseball was everything for me, and I was very passionate. So when I look at young people today and they're like, yeah, I'm really into is different than being passionate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so I think that there's a level of difference. But
passion drives you every day.
Yeah.
And being into something is, you might look at it one day and not think about it the next. And
yeah. So we talk about that in the form of, we're studying about, this is one of the other little things that I like, is the difference between motivation and inspiration. So motivation is, dang, I gotta pay rent. Rent's due next week. I gotta go get a job. I better get my bottom off the couch and go over to Starbucks and get that gig so that I can pay rent. There's a little fear. Mm-hmm. That's motivation. Or motivation is, I can't see my toes when I stand up. I better go to the gym. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you go to the gym and okay, I'm feeling better. So motivation will get you going. Mm-hmm. But inspiration in spirit will keep you going towards your goal. So if you think about it as gas, and you throw gas on the lighter fluid on the charcoal, and you throw the match, and it gets the coals, and hopefully you'll get the coals hot. Mm-hmm. Lighter fluid is motivation, but the sun, which burns every day, is inspiration. Burns hot. It's forever fuel, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, at least it hasn't burned out yet. Yeah. And so I recognized my motivation was to make a team, but my inspiration was to play Major League Baseball, and that just kept me going. Mm-hmm. And that was passion. And I see a little bit less of that.
How long did you play?
Well, I played 5 years in the minors, and then when I got done playing, it was 4 years. It was 4 years because the 1 year I went, they said you're not a very good player, and I'm like, what took you so long? and would you like to coach? Which then I figured out coaching seemed good. I was going to work with young players and impart the knowledge. And then I realized it's daycare. It's just picking up after boys. It's just awful. And they're like 18-year-old boys, and it's so bad. And so but look, there's a lot of great coaches, and maybe I just wasn't one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got my undergrad in teaching, and I am not a teacher. I like to learn.
You're a learner.
Yeah, that's right.
That's very good.
I'm not but you realize, and there's amazing teachers in the world. It's just not my thing. And so once again, it's like the same thing. You're like wonderful coaches, just wasn't for you.
So they were looking for me, and I say they. It was the organization, the Houston Astros. Something. Well, because we like you, because you've set this up as somebody we recognize, and we trust, and your work ethic, and you're likable, and all of those things. They would say that we condense that all into branding. Now that's your brand.
Yeah.
You used to be likable and hardworking, but now you've got a good brand. That just says it all. And so, so they said maybe they, being the powers that be at the Houston Astros, you'd be a good scout, which is out looking for baseball players.
Right.
Which is observation. Which is evaluation. I'm looking at you and I'm making a judgment quickly about your skill set and whether or not it fits into what my observation of Major League, those two guys, what there is. And then projecting physically, I'm looking at an 18-year-old young man and seeing him as a 23-year-old mature adult. What, is he going to grow? And then overall making an evaluation and giving that evaluation a number, which helps us slot all these players, and then selecting and offering contracts. So I really enjoyed that. And that was scouting. And what that is too is compartmentalizing. You're this, you're that, he fits here, he fits there. And that's another habit or pattern that I've picked up on as a trait. And so I compartmentalize myself. I'm a character actor. I'm a little squirrely guy. I'm a troublemaker. I'm the guy that starts trouble. I'm the guy that that gets into trouble in the movie. And because I need to fit. And we do that in life a lot too. You're a jock.
Absolutely.
You're a jock. You're a nerd. You're Glee Club, whatever. And that's limiting.
It is. It's something I really disliked growing up, I'd say, because I wasn't really ever smart enough to be in the nerd group, which I preferred. Like, I think if I could have picked one, it would have either been that or band, but then I never learned an instrument. So, and then I found out it was because, I had this learning disability and really I wasn't capable of learning those things the way I needed to.
Yeah.
But I would say it was more of like in the popular crowd, which didn't feel right for me either. And I would always sit back and observe, because I'm like an observer, I think, of like what's going on in the world. And I'm like, why do we have to separate ourselves? Like, why do there need to be categories of people? Because usually it's one or the other is saying things about the other that aren't very nice.
It is interesting that we do try to put each other in boxes, and it makes it it makes it safe, I suppose, and it makes it reasonable. I can reason that you're in that box,
right? Because
clearly that's something that I'm aware of and I feel comfortable. And I do think that when we talk about safe, it can get into the ego quite a bit, because that's what our ego is there to do, is to protect us or protect the story that we're trying to tell about ourselves. And that story is, we'll do anything to make that story the truth about us.
Right. Even if it doesn't serve us.
I'm a smoker. That's just what I am. I'm not a smoker, but a smoker will.
I didn't know you were a smoker.
No, a smoker will say, I'm a smoker. I've always smoked. I always am going to smoke. That's my story. I can't quit. Tried 100 times. And so you're not going to quit until you just quit telling yourself that story that I'm a smoker. Or I just can't lose weight. I just can't. I've dieted. I've done it all. I'm big boned. Yeah, big T-bone. And so I mean, you got to change your story, which is changing your state. Getting back to the Tony Robbins thing, change your story is by changing your state, changing your state of mind, your state of energy is getting up and doing something.
Yeah, and I know personally that can be challenging when you are struggling with mental health, because I was always the kind of person that would go, work, not to feel. And then there was that time in my life not too long ago when I wasn't expecting, my mental health to take over, didn't understand that I was telling myself a story, didn't understand all of these things. And, I had to go and learn a new way of living and a new way of thinking, and that takes time.
Yeah, and I also think it's getting back to what you said and what your statement is, maybe your mission statement, we feel good together, because somebody needed to tell you or to bring to light what you were experiencing in front of them, and what the story you were telling. You needed to become aware of it, and that wasn't, you knew something wasn't right, but what?
Right.
What? So you've given me the formula, and I've got the numbers, but which numbers do I use to plug into the formula?
That's exactly right.
How do I do it?
And it seems so overwhelming, because you know that something is off, and you know that your life isn't going the way you thought it would be going, and how do you get things back on track, or how do you start creating something new, because this old life isn't serving you anymore? How do you do those things? And it takes a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of figuring things out, and which is what we're trying to do here.
And I think ripping people off, if I'm saying, if I can just be blunt about that, but that's what you're doing, the study of self-help. I've ripped you off for sure, but reading or listening to podcasts that are serviceable, and understanding and finding joy in that observation, I think is fantastic. So, baseball became a career, as it had been. Now I'm working in baseball, I'm scouting, I'm looking for players, I'm being mentored by a lot of guys with a lot of experience, and I'm so respectful, and I'm loving it, and I've got a job and a career, and I'm young, and I'm in Houston, Texas, and I've got enough money on a regular salary, and I've got an expense report. I can have nice meals and take people out and turn my receipts in. I've been provided a car, and I'm traveling, and I'm just as passionate about it, because I'm now on the team, and I'm trying to find players for our team to win. And there's some competition in that, because I'm with these other guys, and in my mind I'm like, I see this guy as that, and I bet you don't see it, or that still had that. And I'm in Houston, and one day I'm single, and I follow a young lady who walked into a building, and I thought, this was back when you did things like this. You met people face to face, and I was going to chat her up for maybe dinner plans, a date.
Okay.
All right. So I was fairly confident in myself in those days, and so I did. But she walked into a theater, which I had never really been before, and I saw these people doing this play, or it was an acting class, and I was like, wow, there's my people. What have I been missing all my life? That's it. And I can do that.
Wow.
So I sat there and watched. I did get a date, by the way. For all of you on the edge of your seat on this story, did you get the date? We don't care about that. I did, and she likes to say that she was the one who granted me my acting career, and I'll go with that. She bears a resemblance to you, Gail Mongan, who lives down in Seabrook.
All right.
And so, which is Houston, Texas. I started to sort of dabble on my free time in acting.
Wow,
In
so you'd
acting
never
class.
had
No, and
never
look, getting back to that, I knew who Major League Baseball players were. I knew their names. I knew where they were from. I knew how tall they were and what they weighed. I knew all of their statistics. I knew what they had for breakfast. But I thought actors were real as a kid, and even into my college. I thought that was really Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man. I didn't know that there was an actor named Lee Majors that played that role. I didn't understand that what acting was. And today we know all about actors the same. So, and I had no interest in acting ever. That being said, I was a bit of a class clown. That being said, I wasn't opposed to public speaking. Like I used to get up and do impressions in front of my school assembly, in front of the whole school.
Okay.
I would get up and tell jokes. I would get up and do sketch comedy. I like to make people laugh. I like to be the shiny light on me. So it did have a little bit of a predisposed personality that led to, look at me, I'm going to make you laugh. And I love making you laugh. So I stayed with baseball, and but I had a little of this other thing, and somewhere I got a call from the owner of the Astros at the time, who said, would you come down to the field, be in uniform, bring some balls and bats? And I'm like, what? Somebody wants to try out. Because, typically there's the owner, he gets a call from his second cousin 3 times removed, and I want to be a Major League Baseball. Okay, we got to go through the drill of, And I go there and I see this guy who I've recognized. By now I started to understand that actors were people who had different names than the ones on television. And there's this guy named Charlie Sheen that was standing there. Well, he was in town doing a movie called The Chase, which was here in Houston, but he was going to go do Major League 2, and he needed a guy to be working out with. So he would rent the Houston Astrodome every night, and he and I would play baseball.
Oh, that's cool.
At 2 a.m, because that was when he was off work. And so we started hanging out. This was kind of well before Tiger Blood. And wintering and all this other.
Right. I remember whenever he was here, it was like a big deal.
Yeah, it was.
Because back then, movies didn't just. I don't know this, but it doesn't seem like they would just come and film in Houston.
Not so often, yeah. And so he had a birthday party that I got invited to, and I met 2 guys who were making a movie in California in the off season at the baseball stadiums called Angels in the Outfield, and they said, Lew, you'd be great in that. Don't go with Charlie to go do Major League 2. You're just going to be like his caddy. Come with us and be in our movie and be our caddy, and which I ended up doing. So I took time off of my job.
Nice.
And I went to Los Angeles and Oakland, and we filmed, and I was basically an extra. But I would play catch every day with this kooky Texan, and he had 2 lines in the movie, and I had 1, and it was Matthew McConaughey.
It's funny.
And then later in my career, when I got another job called the Newton Boys, he had a lot of lines, and I still only had 2. And I reminded him about that. So, but during that time, I had taken vacation, because I never took vacation. I was still a young, decent guy. Still
how old
studying.
Are you now?
Let's say 27, 28-ish.
Okay.
So I took vacation, and during that time, the Houston Astros were sold, management changed, the guy that took over the team, had been in the organization. He had been a great player named Bob Watson, who's since passed, God rest his soul. He was a very good player. He was a very good baseball person. He called me up. He said, Lou boy, don't worry about, I don't know why I always imitate what I think his voice is, but I told you I did impressions, right?
You did?
Lou boy, don't worry about coming home too soon. I know you're doing good out there with, Hollywood, and I was like, uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. So I did come home. I told Angels in the outfield, are we done? Because I'm just hanging out playing catch with Matthew McConaughey, and as fun as that is, I got to get back to work. So I come home, and he goes, look, you got a little bug for something else, which is you great baseball guy. It's a lifetime occupation. You're going to be in this game forever if you let it take that hold. But I see this other passion in you, and I think you'd be crazy not to explore it. So I'm not firing you, but I'm not rehiring you. I'm like, that's called firing, and I'm pissed. Yeah, I'm upset about that. So
how did you handle that? Seriously?
Not well.
What'd you do?
I was angry. I told him he was wrong about, and I love baseball, and how could he question it? And I hadn't done anything wrong. I took vacation, and I wasn't enamored with this other thing, and how dare you, and now I'm out of a job, and you ruined my life. That's how I handled it.
And then how did it look after that?
After that, baseball went on this weird strike, and nobody was hiring because I had a good name in the game. I was being built to run a team. A cool young guy that was going to be, because a lot of those guys that I was coming up with, they have had great baseball careers. So the San Diego Padres called, and they said, hey, we like you a lot. We know no one's hiring, but you want to come work for us? I mean, San Diego is a great place. You ever been to San Diego?
Yeah.
It's a great place.
Beautiful.
If you've ever been to San Diego, and those of you from San Diego, you know, and it's not a hidden secret anymore. It's great. And so who wouldn't want to go to San Diego, even though they were terrible, and have this job in the scouting department?
Right.
And just kind of the same job. It was sort of a lateral move,
Beach
and maybe
life.
it had an upside. Salary car. Maybe there's a girl down here, and an expense report, and come work for us. And then this echo started in my ear. You got this thing, for this acting, this little bug, and I think it's important that you see it through. It might turn into a passion. You might be okay. You'd be silly not to at least explore that. But if you stay in this game, we'll never know. And I turned them down. I turned the Padres down. And so I got a job moving furniture, which is hard work. I try to not, it's difficult work. Help me with difficult. Help me remove hard from my vocabulary, and difficult. Hard is cement, difficult is task. So I didn't take the job, and I pursued acting, went back to college, Brooklyn College, to learn the skills and craft of acting. I recognized that I could change my story. Right?
That's right.
I was a baseball guy. That's all I ever did. But I had to change my story, which means I had to change my state. My state was, thanks for asking, I'm mad about getting fired and being kicked out of baseball. My state was, I'm going to go back into baseball. I'm going to show you. But I changed that, and my story, I'm an actor.
And you did the work.
And I did the work. Okay. So now I'm really a laborer studying acting.
And did you have
But
your
guess
affirmations?
what? Thank you. Oh, have we already? You're good at this, because I was just going to say I never thought I couldn't. For some reason, and I didn't even know what acting was, and I really wasn't very good. I'm congenial. I'm a moderate storyteller.
You're a good actor.
I'm charismatic,
You're
but
a good actor.
acting has a skill set that needs to be honed. But I never thought that I couldn't be an actor. And so I started watching everybody, because that's my thing, right? It's your thing, observation and learning. So I started going to plays in town here in Houston. I started looking at films that I respected. I started to recognize, what does it take to be an actor? And then I'd work hard all day and make whatever the minimum wage was, and I'd tuck away a little bit so that I had enough money to go take someone to lunch. And I'd go to theaters and watch plays, and then I'd take the best actor on stage that day to lunch. Can I take you to lunch? Would you mind? And there's not an actor that won't turn down a free lunch.
Right.
There, you know. And so, and then I would have this kind of conversation, and I'd say, so what's a little secret? What's a little good piece of advice you could give? You see, I want to be an actor. And the best piece of advice I got, one guy told me, Randy Ladner, I don't know whatever happened to him. He was a good actor. He said, you only need to give yourself permission. When you say you're an actor, it is so. When you go home for Christmas and say I'm an actor, and not I'm waiting tables, or I want to be an actor, or I'm trying to be an actor, or I'm studying to be an actor. When you come home and defiantly tell the neighbors I'm an actor, but you buy into it, not your bank account, not your resume, but when you buy into it and you say it with affirmation, it's true. It is true.
It's true.
I think, therefore I am. That's Denzel's thing.
Yeah.
And so I applied that. And slowly but surely that started to provide for me in that realm. I mean, it took a long time, but it also, it kept me moving. And I think for those of you that are feeling stuck, which we all are, it takes it takes movement. It literally takes some movement. It literally takes some movement to get you out of that fear zone, that paralytic, I'm frozen, I'm stuck, that head in the hands, I don't know what to do. You got to physically
even
change.
If you don't believe it. I mean, I remember 2 times specifically having to tell people when they would say, well, aren't you going to get a part-time job or something while you're doing this? And I said, no, this is my job.
Yeah.
But you're not making anything. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is my job.
Yeah.
And I will be making something. Well, it takes a long time. And I'm like, well, yeah, no. And I mean, inside I'm like quivering. Of course I know that it's going to take a long time before I made money or this or that, or
those are all,
when you just stay true to what.
Those are all paradigms. It's a word that I don't really understand, but a paradigm is what is so built into you as the old 9 to 5, the old work hard and you'll get someplace. Those are paradigms that we've set up that we have to erase for ourselves. And the relative value of what you are making right now, you're making service, you are making community. There's not a value on that. You know how we say there's no value to put on what a mother does to raise children? It's the same. What you're doing is valuable. What you're doing is worthwhile. What you're doing is money in the bank, and it will bear that fruit. It will provide for you, and that's a very scary, fearful place to be, but it's also false. It's a false place because none of that's true. It's a lie that I can't make it. It's a lie that I can't provide for my family and myself. It's a lie. And if you accept that lie, then that becomes your story. And so you have to change that. And it starts with self-talk.